Welcome to Pacific States University's online lecture series for our undergraduate course titled GEN 108, Explorations in the Arts. Today, we will cover how a single, incredible city sparked a movement that completely transformed European art forever. As your instructor, I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this material. So, if you've got your syllabi ready, you know we're looking at the dawn of the Florentine Renaissance. We're going to explore how looking backward to the ancient world actually propelled humanity forward into a totally new era of creative and intellectual explosion. Here's our agenda for today's lecture. First, the rise of Florence. Second, humanism and the Medici. Third, Brunelleschi and linear perspective. Fourth, the classical nude revival. And finally, masters of scientific observation. Let's jump right in. Section 1, the rise of Florence. You know, every great movement needs an epicenter, right? A place where the exact right mix of wealth, talent, and ambition all collide at exactly the right time. For the Renaissance, that place was unquestionably Florence, Italy. Just picture this bustling, highly competitive hub of commerce and new ideas. Florence really drove the rediscovery of classical antiquity. And what that actually means for us is that they literally started digging up Roman ruins and translating ancient Greek texts. They weren't looking at the classical world as dead history, but rather as an active, living blueprint for the future. This backward glance to ancient Rome and Greece served as the absolute catalyst that transformed European art forever. The artists there weren't just copying old statues. No, they were resurrecting a lost standard of excellence to push European art forward into a brand new era of human achievement. Moving on to Section 2, Humanism and the Medici. Now, a city can have all the ancient ruins in the world, but without a fundamental shift in mindset, and let's be real, the serious money required to fund it, those ruins just stay rocks in the dirt. The crucial intellectual foundation of this period is humanism. We define this as a cultural focus centered on humanity, emphasizing rationality, scientific observation, and the rediscovery of classical antiquity. Before this shift, the prevailing worldview in medieval Europe was almost entirely focused on the divine, the afterlife, the ethereal. Humanism dramatically flipped the script. It essentially said, hey, look at humanity. Look at what human beings can achieve right here and right now through reason, science, and observing the natural world. It brought the focus back down to earth, empowering individuals to really understand and master their own reality. To really grasp the mechanics of this huge cultural shift, we need to lock down 5 key concepts. Those are humanism, rationality, classical revival, scientific observation, and individualism. These were the absolute pillars of the new Florentine worldview. But as we all know, big ideas don't just magically paint massive frescoes or carve giant blocks of marble all by themselves, right? They require intense patronage. Enter the Medici family. These guys were wildly wealthy bankers, incredibly politically savvy, and they poured massive amounts of their fortune into supporting the artists, scholars, and architects who embodied these 5 concepts. The Medici provided the essential financial greenhouse, if you will, that was completely necessary for these humanist ideals to take root and really flourish in Florence. Section 3, Brunelleschi and linear perspective. So let's see how this abstract philosophy shifts into physical, groundbreaking application. We're shifting from how people thought to how they literally built and saw the spatial world around them, starting with architecture and spatial design. Think about Brunelleschi's magnificent dome for the Florence Cathedral. It was a true engineering marvel of the time that honestly defied what people thought was physically possible. But step 1 notes something equally monumental for art history. Filippo Brunelleschi pioneers architectural formulas. Specifically, he discovered the mathematical rules of linear perspective. For the very first time, an artist could map out a convincing 3-dimensional space on a flat 2-dimensional surface using precise mathematical geometry. Then, in step 2, Leon Battista Alberti comes along and codifies these rules. He literally writes them down in a treatise, creating a replicable manual that other artists could study and apply. Suddenly, art isn't just about feeling or spiritual symbolism anymore. It's an exact, rational science. Which brings us to Section 4, the classical nude revival. This intense focus on exactness, anatomy, and human reality didn't just stay on flat painted surfaces or in building construction. Let's shift our focus to sculpture, where we'll see how the concept of individualism took literal, physical human shape. The absolute game changer in this medium is Donatello. His work is phenomenal. Donatello pioneered the classical nude revival. Prioritizing the individual human form like this was nothing short of revolutionary at the time. For centuries prior, the human body was often hidden beneath heavy drapery, overly stylized, or frankly just treated as a vessel of sin. But Donatello, heavily inspired by those ancient Roman statues being unearthed, brought the freestanding, anatomically accurate nude back into the spotlight. He wasn't just carving generic bodies either, he was capturing individual personalities, psychological weight, and precise musculature. His work perfectly embodies the humanist focus on the inherent beauty, proportion, and dignity of humanity itself. Finally, Section 5, Masters of Scientific Observation. Okay, so we've looked at architecture, mathematical perspective, and sculpture. Let's examine how painters utilize these new rules of science, rationality, and observation over the course of the 15th century. If we trace this chronological lineage, you can see master painters progressively pushing the boundaries of scientific observation. In the 1420s, we have Masaccio, who was among the very first to boldly apply Brunelleschi's linear perspective to painting. He created startlingly realistic, three-dimensional figures that seem to cast real shadows. Jump forward to the 1450s, and Piero della Francesca is taking that mathematical perspective to an almost crystalline, perfect extreme. By the 1480s, Botticelli is weaving this classical revival into sweeping, complex mythological narratives with incredible linear grace. And pushing into the 1490s, Mantegna is using extreme foreshortening and rigorous anatomical study to create spatial illusions that practically break the frame of the painting. It's like each generation stood on the shoulders of the last, relentlessly refining their scientific observation of the natural world. All of this incredible innovation, the math, the patronage, the classical inspiration, culminates in one undeniable historical reality. This is a really powerful concluding quote for your Gen 108 notes, and a definitive takeaway for today's lecture. Quote, "By the late 15th century, Europe had entered a new cultural age centered on humanity, reason, and the rediscovery of classical antiquity, the Renaissance," end quote. Florence had successfully ignited an intellectual and artistic fire that would literally illuminate the rest of the continent for centuries to come. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder before our next meeting. If rationality and individualism built the Renaissance and pulled Europe out of the Middle Ages, what core philosophies will define humanity's next cultural age? As we look at our own modern worldview today, with all of our rapid technological, digital, and social changes, what are the new pillars we're building on? Are we heading toward a new Renaissance or something entirely different? Think deeply about that, and we'll pick up the discussion next time. Thank you for joining today's lecture.